Um, So kind of shifting tack just a bit, we're going to talk about using harvesting ship-based AIS for more affordable data on vessels at sea. So looking at that economy of scale and looking at how data, existing data, in this case an older technology, can be used to, ultimately I use that older technology to identify new things, use it in a different way, understand better, using these signals and these various technologies, what's happening on the water. And so Leslie Roberson from the Commonwealth Science and Industry Research Organization, or CSIRO, in Australia, is here to present to us today on this topic. And I'd like you all to give a big round of applause for Leslie as she approaches the stage. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Leslie Roberson, and I'm with the CSIRO in Australia. And I'd just like to quickly acknowledge that I live and work and greatly enjoy land that is traditionally owned by the Quandamooka people, and that land has never been officially ceded. So talking about ship-based AIS today, representing work from an awesome team of people. One of them is Chris Mosenader. He is here as well, and we'll be talking more about this project later today. So AIS, old technology, as Baba mentioned, and a lot of you are probably familiar with it. A lot of people who use AIS might not actually know that much about the different types of AIS and where it comes from. Neither did we want to. This was all sort of an accidental thing we got into, which is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the details we've discovered. So AIS was originally for ships communicating with each other so they don't hit each other. It uses VHF radio frequencies, and these work at night and in clouds, so that's useful for avoiding collisions. It's currently our most comprehensive and publicly accessible source of information on ships at sea. So originally, we were just getting line of sight messages, which is about 74 kilometers at sea, the distance between the land receiver, the ships. Really quickly, this became really useful for a whole bunch of uses beyond just vessel traffic, so it didn't take long for people to say, let's get some satellites up there so we can use this further offshore and get more information, which they did. So those transmissions are hundreds of kilometers into low Earth orbit, and we now people have just been chucking these satellites up right and left, so we've got a massive network of small satellites. And this is a little bit old, but basically this image shows coverage is pretty good, pretty complete. There are some spotty areas, but we have a lot of satellites receiving AIS. This has led to a proliferation of providers. Many of these I'm sure you recognize. There's probably people from some of these groups here today. This is an image from marine traffic of the tankers cruising around near us in Bali, and then Global Fishing Watch as well, their AIS data. A lot of these platforms are using not just AIS, but many sources of information. But they're not showing us a complete picture of ships at sea, which we know. One of the gaps is that not all vessels have to carry AIS. So there's Class A AIS, which was what was originally mandated. And those are for any passenger vessel, and then a large vessel or a vessel going into international waters. If you're like me and throw around the words gross tons all the time and don't really know how big that is, there's a 290 gross ton squid boat, so that could technically go fish on the high seas without AIS. And then below it is a big old longliner that could technically fish in an EEZ without AIS. That's for the International Maritime Organization. So countries can add their own AIS requirements, and many have, including Indonesia. I think Indonesia has fishing boats more than 60 gross tons, maybe, have to have AIS. And a lot of those additional requirements are not Class A systems, they're Class B systems, which was developed later. It's cheaper, smaller, there's a few differences, but they transmit less frequently. And that's what's kind of being pushed for a lot of the smaller vessels. So that's one source of missing data, is which vessels have to carry AIS. Another, of course, is missing, when a vessel has AIS but has turned it off or spoofed their transceiver, which, if you know your way around maritime electronics, apparently isn't that hard to do. I've had a lot of fishermen who claim they can't use a smartphone app but have somehow figured out how to spoof their AIS. So, another source of missing data, or another problem, is message collisions. So we've got all these satellites, and they're getting a million signals, and there's duplication of messages, and some getting blocked. So one of the AIS that's getting missed more frequently is the Class B, which are your smaller vessels. So our collaborators at Starboard, they found, for instance, in one of their analyses, that 70% of the AIS data they were getting, the messages, were only detected by other ships, not from the satellites. So one way to solve that is to just chuck more and more satellites up there. We stumbled across another potential solution, which is just logging that ship-based AIS data directly. So this is not what we intended to do. We developed this little machine. When I say we, I mean my brilliant colleague, Chris Mosenader. And the point was to log ships' navigation radar data. So we built this little microcomputer. The timing of Chris's talk has changed. It's actually today, but he's going to talk a lot more about the road to this development. But the original one cost about $700. So we trialed it on 13 vessels. And then we discovered, we're like, hey, we'd really like to know which of these radar targets were not detected by AIS. Oh, well, turns out we can just plug the AIS receiver right into this multiplexer and get that stream as well. So we just wanted to see dark vessels. And then we realized, wow, this AIS data stream is awesome, super high quality. It doesn't have the same message duplication and collision problem as the satellite receives streams. It also gets a lot of those Class B messages from those smaller vessels. For example, one of our partner vessels got 23 million AIS messages in 3 weeks. It's way easier to log than the navigation radar data. We haven't really had any problems with it, except one boat where no one knew where the AIS transceiver was. It was like hidden in a cupboard, but it's like pretty straightforward. And it's cheap. We could also reduce this hardware cost quite a lot if we weren't trying to deal with the navigation radar data. So we think this could be pretty useful. One reason is because a lot of end users and a lot of our partners can't get what they need from the free AIS data sources. So maybe they need really high resolution data in a particular area, or they need a bunch of historical data. And they can buy that, but it's still very expensive and too expensive for many of our partners. So we realized that some of the agencies we work with could harvest their own AIS data using their patrol vessel or their research vessel. So just in conclusion, we totally accidentally found that this ship-based AIS is really good. It's also improving commercial data, AIS data sources. So our friends at Starboard have found that this is really helping their platform, their database as well. But if you can't afford that, you could probably harvest it yourself if you're managing a marine protected area or like a particular area and you've got your own boats cruising around, or you're friends with someone who has boats cruising around. Of course, data does not equal knowledge. We've heard that a lot. So you still need, if you're an enforcement agency, you still need that data to arrive to you in a way that you can use and understand and take action. And so that's where we're trying to go next, is like figure out how we can make this useful for people. So love to talk to anyone more about this. Thanks a lot to our partners and crews and many people who have helped us with this and donated their time. Chris and I are here and keen to meet you all, and there's our contacts. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Leslie. And I think there was some really good lessons in the presentation that Leslie offered with respect to how we can use old technology for new purposes and ultimately discover some new uses for technology that we never even thought to use before. The radar harvesting, in my view, is one of the most exciting developments because I've always had the view of nothing on the surface of the ocean is invisible anymore. It just depends on how much you're willing to pay. And if you have a system that can reduce the costs for the technology that you're trying to utilize, then ultimately you can create systems using a much cheaper technology that you could probably accomplish using optical sensing from satellites or something, but it would be far more expensive than doing the radar harvesting, matching it up or marrying it up to AIS. And the other thing that I took from Leslie's presentation is one of the things that's been exciting about this work as part of SAFET is seeing technology providers come together and go, hey, you know what, your thing works with my thing. Let's get together and make this work better. And so Starboard Maritime, which is in New Zealand, has been doing a lot of really great work around dark vessel detection, and hearing that they've found this new tool useful in the work that they've been doing is very exciting personally to me, and I think should be of interest to everyone in this room.